What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I don't need you to worry for me, 'cause I'm all right. I don't want you to tell me it's time to come home. And I'll stop it right there. That one's going a little bit far into the... But we'll see.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, everybody. We're, of course, discussing 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark, and this week the headline reads, Source Prank, because pranks need a source from somewhere.
Exactly.
No. We're discussing the source and the prankster. So getting straight into it, our first episode discussion is The Source, written by Tony Blake and Paul Jackson, directed by John T. Kretschmer, and this originally aired October 2nd of 1994.
All right, everybody. Listen up. I've got an important announcement to make. Biologic has just called a press conference. As I expected, that piece of yours on Eric Thorpe has thoroughly ruffled his feathers. I guess he wants his rebuttal on the 11 o'clock news tonight.
Who's Eric Thorpe? He's that multimillionaire who just took over Biologic.
Yeah, real whiz kid. Millionaire by the time he was your age.
Yeah, well, I had the mumps in 6th grade. Kind of slowed me down.
Esther, I want you and Owen to work up a background piece on Eric Thorpe. Right. Lois, you and Clark cover that press conference. Oh, and take Jimmy the Mumps here with you. Lois, things are gonna get very tense around Biologic. This source of yours had better be rock solid.
I'd stake my reputation on it.
Yes.
After Superman prevents an accident during a carnival ride, a man named Stuart Hofferman comes to Lois, claiming that it wasn't an accident, but that the switches in the ride were defective, and while he tried to report it to his superiors, nothing was ever done. Lois releases the story in the Planet, but her success on this scandal is short-lived, as the switch company, Biologic, under the leadership of a man named Thorpe, holds a press conference claiming that the switches were not defective, that it was possibly sabotaged by a competitor, and backs up this information by having pressured Stuart Hofferman into making an official statement. Lois finds Hofferman and asks him to explain the sudden 180, but they are both taken captive by Thorpe's men and trapped inside oil barrels and left to drown until Superman arrives to save them, prompting Lois to put Stuart into protective custody at Clark's apartment. Lois and Clark go off to find Stuart's report by going undercover at Biologic, but what Clark learns by using his X-ray vision and super hearing is that Daniel Hansen, someone running against the incumbent governor in the upcoming election, is in league with Thorpe, promising him defense contracts in the future if they can guarantee his winning the election. Upon returning to Clark's apartment, it looks like his visiting parents have been drugged, while Stuart's body is missing, seemingly murdered if the bloodstains on the mattress are to be believed. Meanwhile, with the Planet being sued for libel, Perry is forced to suspend Lois, which gets her down, as her contacts all seem to have turned their backs on her. But a few words from the Man of Steel himself manage to get her back on her feet, attempting to find the truth and get her reputation back. She realizes that Stuart was not murdered, but rather he planned to fake his death with his best friend Oliver. Lois and Clark track down Oliver, and he reveals that they were right. They also learn that Thorpe's next plan is to cause a malfunction of the newly installed subway system, which would kill the current governor, who was planning to be aboard the inaugural ride, effectively giving Hansen a clear shot at the governorship. Superman rushes in to stop the train while Lois and Stuart take down Thorpe.
Perry said it was only temporary. You'll be back before you know it.
Doing what? Writing classifieds? It's over, Clark. Stuart's dead, and so's my career.
Miss Lane, I have to ask for your press ID.
Of course, the final indignity. You know, it's funny. I don't even know where the unemployment office is.
I don't believe you, Lois.
Where is the woman who loves to roll up her sleeves and get into the middle of a good fight?
I appreciate what you're trying to do, Clark.
Clark! The mayor just called a press conference to announce a new chief of police. Perry wants us down there right away. Taxi!
Sure. I'll call you later. City Hall.
I'll miss you, partner.
Okay, so getting into the investigation.
All right, so there's a couple differences here from the script that our reactions found, and the first one is that in the scene where Lois is trying to contact people to find out what's really going on, and they're all sort of like not giving her any information. They've effectively turned their back on her. She gets mad and she throws down her Rolodex. However, in the script, she was supposed to have a huge temper tantrum at this whole thing. Like, she was supposed to be really like pissed off, and like she's supposed to like throw her Rolodex, kick over a trash can, like just like throw everything off of her desk, basically just lose her shit, and she's like so mad, and then she ends up just like crying on the couch, like she's just so upset, and that's when Superman comes in and they have their discussion. So a little bit more anger, a little bit more intense, and I think that this is good. They kind of cut that out. It gets a little dark that way, I think.
Yeah, I was just saying, I was like, I wonder why they changed that. It's just like, maybe there was just like the day was going too long or something. Like, so Terry, we're not going to reset the camera. So how about you just try to like throw that thing in the trash and miss or something? There we go.
Exactly.
Problem solved.
There was also a scene of the trio that's Lois, Clark, and Stewart escaping via logic. Remember, they tripped the alarm or whatever, and the countdown was going down. There was supposed to be a scene in there of them actually escaping from Biologic, being chased by the security guards because they couldn't stop the countdown. And during it, they're running, and Clark uses his heat vision real quick to like knock out all the lights, and it's like pitch dark. And Clark says, hold my hands, he says to both of them, and he leads them out, in the dark because he can see. Once they get outside, Lois is like, how could you see in the dark? And Clark says, well, I spent a lot of time playing in the caves in Smallville. And Lois goes, maybe I should start calling you Batman. It's like, I like it. I like it, but it's like, I think like if you establish that Batman exists in that world, like, would you really you wouldn't know that he had a bat cave if there was a real Batman, like the people in the Chris Nolan verse don't know that Batman has a bat cave necessarily. They just know Batman exists. So, you can't, I don't think you can do that because then you have Batman as a comic book character in Lois and Clark, and then where's Superman? How does he relate to this whole thing? So, you can see why they kind of thought it was a neat idea. It was clever. It was cool. But in the end, it's like, nah, that's all right. Yeah.
And it does make you wonder exactly, like, how many caves are there in Kansas?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The man in the train near the end, he was actually supposed to have a heart attack. The original script said he was supposed to have a heart attack, and Jonathan was going to perform CPR to save him. And for whatever reason, they just toned it down and made it just be him fainting. iReaction said I'm not sure why they changed it, because it kind of made, if he did have a heart attack, it sort of made their bond a little bit deeper, because Jonathan just lost a friend to a heart attack, and him being present to save someone from a heart attack would have made a much more deeper connection between the two.
Yeah, so, make him feel a bit better about life and death and all that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So it was kind of interesting they changed that. I don't know why. And then finally, this is a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. And I thought this too, when Lois was leaving after she was suspended, and the security guard comes up and he's like, Lois, I'm going to need your press pass. It's almost like when you see a cop being suspended and they have to take your badge and your gun. And, I guess this bothered Lane Smith, Perry White, a lot, because again, like, they're not cops, they are just members of the press. And it's just like, this was kind of like the whole thing, cops without oversight again. Like, they were treating them like, police officers. So it bothered him a little bit. And I could see why, because I was like, that's weird. Just let me have your press pass. It was weird.
I told you, Mr. Thorpe said it was just a mistake. He gave me his word the rest of those defective switches were being shipped to a dump. There's no further threat.
But if that were true, why did he try to vacuum pack you into a 55-gallon drum?
Stewart, I can't do this without you. Even though we don't know each other that well, I think we have something very important in common. Our reputations. You've worked too hard to just throw it all away and run. And I can't salvage mine without you.
Stuart, if we found you, they will find you.
Okay. What do we do?
Okay, if we're right, and Thorpe tried to kill you because he's still shipping those switches, we need proof.
Distribution has the shipping manifests. Their central office is upstairs from mine.
Forget it. Everything on that level is under heavy security. Even I don't have clearance to that floor.
But I do.
Alright, so getting into our main discussion. And the lead this episode, we have a corrupt tech company.
Yes, we do. It's not Microsoft.
Yeah, obviously a made-up company, Viologic, a V name. We love our V names here at the Rewatch Podcast.
We do. Yes, we do.
And it all starts at this like family fun day, big fair, Ferris wheel, and it just goes crazy. And Superman has to come in and save the day. So, an interesting setup.
Yeah, we're getting Superman really early in this episode.
Early
Usually
Superman.
He comes at the end, but yeah.
Lois spending her free time with Clark and his parents as well. Interesting.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this was a Daily Planet sponsored thing, is what they said. So that's why, I mean, you could argue that she's there just because it's work. But yeah, it is interesting they put the two together.
And Lois getting in a race with a little girl.
Yeah.
On the slide.
That was funny.
Clark helping her win just to feed her ego even more.
Well, that girl was being a little brat.
But yeah, you know, this whole thing plays into the main story because this guy, Stuart Hofferman, shows up. As like a confidential source, he wants to tell Lois about how there were these computer chips that were faulty and he put in a report and everything, but for some reason they were shipped anyway, and he thinks that some bad goings on are happening over at Viologic.
Exactly. Now, speaking of Stuart, who is Stuart?
I don't know. This is
You
another
don't know?
person.
Okay.
He doesn't even look familiar to me.
See, this ties into my little introduction there. I was singing the theme song from the TV show Bosom Buddies, which starred Tom Hanks along with Peter Scolari, who plays Stuart in this episode.
Okay, so I don't think I ever saw Bosom Buddies.
Oh, you never saw? All right, Bosom Buddies is it's like a '80s classic '80s sitcom. So see, that's the whole thing. You gotta be familiar with the '80s sitcoms. See, that's when I grew up. So this is one of those shows for me, like Who's the Boss and Family Ties and Bosom Buddies. All of them are right up there. Basically, Tom Hanks. This is like Tom Hanks, I think, is one of his like big break, his first big thing, or maybe not his first big thing, but it's one of the big things that got him, noticed. Him and Peter Scolari played these advertising guys who they didn't have a lot of money and they couldn't afford a place to live, but they could afford this one particular hotel. But it was a hotel that only rented to female customers. So they basically dressed as women, sort of like Tootsie. They dressed as women and they got an apartment in this hotel, and that's where they lived. And it's all about their interactions with their neighbors. And Tom Hanks falls in love with his female neighbor, but of course he's a woman to her. She doesn't know that he's a guy, and so he introduces himself to her as a guy. So he has to play both sides, and sometimes it's like Three's Company. There's mix-ups and misunderstandings and things like that. It's very funny. It's very, very funny.
It does sound like a bit of a mashup of like The Odd Couple meets Tootsie meets Laverne and Shirley.
Right. Oh yeah.
Meets
Yeah.
Three's Company.
Yeah. It's fun though. I mean, it had. I think her name was Donna Dixon. Was the beautiful blonde he was in love with. And I remember as a young boy, I was like, oh, I could see this. I could see why he likes her. I understand this completely. And then the girl who was in love with Peter Scolari's character, like he wasn't interested in her at all, but she was totally in love with him. And it was good. It was fun. I don't even know if it's out on DVD actually.
I'll have to see if I can find an episode somewhere.
Yeah, it was. It was great fun back in the day. I didn't understand cross-dressing at all, but I understand what was going on in these episodes.
Yeah, but they do a bit of setup here as well. I mean, it's awfully convenient that this guy would just immediately be like, "Why did they ship those faulty chips out?" Like,
right.
I'm going to go to the press. You think he would go to his boss first, but whatever. It's a little give me that you got to go with, or else you got no story. It does, of course, turn out that the CEO, Eric Thorpe, is like totally nefarious. He's like your classic rich guy who wants to be richer, and like he wants to rig an election and stuff to get this guy to be governor and eventually president, and you know, it's all about just the rich wanting to be richer, right?
Yeah, he's a weird character, I will say. There's one scene that I got to call out because it was just like odd. Like, I don't know if it was just padding or what, but he's sitting there and his henchman comes in and Eric Thorpe is just playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you know you can play over 50 songs with just 3 chords, G, C, and D? And he actually was playing the guitar. Like, I checked to see, like, I actually grabbed the guitar and see if he was actually playing the right, the right chords, and there it's G, C, and D is what he's playing. But it's like, it has nothing to do with anything in the story. It never comes back again, ever. It's just, he's just playing the guitar. They wanted to have him do something for some reason. Like, I don't understand why he couldn't just been sitting there. Like, the guitar thing was just odd to me.
Yeah, he does make a lot of odd choices throughout his plan. And, you know, they set up this whole thing with Stuart, too. Like, he gets a tissue to clean his glasses, and then they set up that he doesn't throw them out. He likes to, like, use them right up until you cannot use it anymore and then throw it away. So later, when he wants to pass a secret note to Lois, it's just like, hey, look, I've used this tissue once and I'm throwing it in the trash.
Right.
You want to come and check that out?
I think they were trying to make him, I saw on, where was it? It was some review, I think it must have been the Superman homepage, that they were trying to make him more of the OCD type, but it just didn't come across very well. They didn't do enough of it. Maybe they spent too much time with the guy playing guitar. You know, they could have put some more examples in there of him being more OCD or whatever, and then it would have made much more sense. You know, they make the reference later about his toothbrush, you know, and things like that. And it was supposed to imply that you had to have things a certain way. That's how he is.
Yeah, it came more across as like he's like more just fussy,
yeah,
or particular rather than OCD.
Right. Well, also with Thorpe is like, you know, he has this plan, you know, to get rid of the governor, and iReactions made this comment in his notes as well, that it's kind of a convoluted way to go around this whole thing. They're like, first the Ferris wheel, and then finally, you know, he gets to the subway. It's like, you couldn't just hire like a gunman to take out the governor and like save all this other like unnecessary stuff that you're doing. It just seemed like it was just so convoluted, his whole plot, his whole plan to take, you know, to get the governor out of the way.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if he's ever like tried to legitimately back somebody for governor.
Right, exactly.
You know, how about you just fund their campaign, and you know, if they put on a good campaign, they become governor. Well, hey, that's great for you. You know, you have a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's weird that he would just go straight to crazy microchip plan,
exactly,
and governor assassination on a train, and
I know.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre. But he talks Stuart into sort of, you know, going back on what he told Lois, of course,
right,
so we can publicly go out there and go, the Daily Planet's full of crap, here's my proof. And then immediately he goes and captures Stuart and Lois and puts them in barrels and throws them in the water.
Yes.
As if like that wouldn't be shifty.
No.
The Daily Planet does this story, you have your guy come out and say, no, it's not true. And then the two of them like wash up on shore dead in a barrel, like as if they're not going to go to you and be like,
right,
hey, look, this reporter and that guy who works for you are dead. Explain.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. He just didn't think it through.
I did enjoy the stuff, though, where they go into Biologic to try and get the proof. And Clark starts to overhear Thorpe talking with this governor guy. And he uses his X-ray vision to look through the wall and listen in. And the X-ray vision looked really good. And then Lois, like, waves her hand in front of Clark's face.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, that wall must be so interesting. But when she waves her hand, it does like the X-ray effect.
Right.
You can see all their bones and stuff. And I thought that was a really cool effect. I really liked it.
That was, yeah. I like the line, you know. It was a good snarky line. Wow, that is so interesting, Clark.
And he's just like, well, I was just thinking, give me a break. And then, of course, you know, he goes after the Daily Planet as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they get served with, like, this $20 million defamation suit.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of forces Perry to stand Lois down. Like, they're like, this is falling apart. We need to distance ourselves from you. So she ends up pretty much unemployed. I think it's, I don't think they technically fire her, but they're just like, you've got to go away now. You're on like suspension until all this stuff clears up. She's hiding Stuart at Clark's place, and Clark's parents are in town as well. So I thought that was actually a funny scene too, where she shows up and hides Stuart at his place, and he's just like, I don't know if I can do this, and they're all soaking wet from being in the water. And Martha's just like, oh, nonsense, Clark, we can totally take him in. And immediately he's just like, can you make me an omelet, and I need a toothbrush, and make sure it's the one with the pick on the end.
Yeah, and the cheese has to be this if you have it, you know. Yeah.
And immediately Martha's just like, oh, why did I say yes?
And it just like you said, it does come off as fussy. It doesn't sound like he's OCD, like the way, like I said, they should have, if they had spent a little more time with the script, you know, fixing his character up a little bit, I think it would have come off a lot better, because people can be OCD without being that type of fussy.
And I think this whole thing is really good for the Lois character as well, because they were saying, like, maybe we won't stand you down if you reveal your source.
Right.
And she kind of sticks to her guns as well, where she's just like, I'm not going to give up my source. Like, people trust me. I'm a reporter. People come to me and they give me their stories, and I tell them I'll make sure that they are kept out of it or protected. So,
right.
You know, she could have just given up Stuart, but instead she sticks to her guns and lets it go. And, you know, she ostensibly loses her job for it. So when she's moping around and she's trying to call more contacts, and nobody will have anything to do with her after what has happened, you can see how she would naturally be a bit down in the dumps. And of course, Superman shows up to give her a bit of a pep talk, which, I don't know, it was a short scene, but it was nice.
Yeah, it was good.
And then she, of course, really gets like down in the dumps because Stuart fakes his death.
Now, did you think he was dead for real when you saw it?
I didn't think he was dead, but I didn't pick that he'd faked his death.
Yeah, see, I knew that he was. I remember this part of that, so I was like, oh yeah, that's right, he's not dead.
Yeah, and you know, again, it's like with the tissue thing. They set up the best friend Oliver like really early.
They did, yeah.
So when it comes back and they're looking at the pictures, and of course Jonathan's just like, that's the guy, the delivery guy. I'm like, oh, okay, so they set him up so he would hide Stuart, and it all works out. And that, again, like, that was a good thing, because we sort of had Lois down in the dumps. She gets a bit of this pep talk from Superman. She comes back strong, saying, like, I'm thinking about this like a reporter again. So she's back up and she works all this out, and they track down Stuart. It's so odd that they pick up Oliver by the ear.
Oh, yes.
he like comes out the front door to get the paper. They pick him up by the ear. And then in the next scene, he's holding like an ice pack to his ear, as if like they hurt him that much. I thought that was a funny little touch.
Yeah, it was. I noticed. I didn't notice it at first, and then I went back because I was checking something else, and I was like, oh my God, he has an ice pack on his ear now. I'm like, that's good. That's good. Very good. I was a little disappointed at first about the parents, about Ma and Pa, because they didn't really have a whole lot to do. They were just sort of there. And I was like, why are they even there? Because they didn't give any like sage advice like they usually do. You know, it's not like their usual thing. It's not like their usual appearance that they do in Lois and Clark. They were just kind of there. And I was like, why are they, you know, and I finally figured it out near the end. It's like, well, they have to have a reason they have to have someone who can identify the delivery guy when they figure out, oh, I think it's Oliver, and then they identify him. It's like, well, they have to have someone who can do that. You know, it's not so important that they're on the subway at the end. You know, I was like, why? That's like, he's going to save them, of course. They're going to be fine. But yeah, I just like, well, I guess they could have done that with any character, but why do it with any character if you've got the parents already established? So that's why they're there. I'm used to them coming in with their great wisdom, you know, and shaping the way and showing us how they've shaped Clark, you know, over the years. So I was a little disappointed, but I'm like, well, they need someone to fill this role. And that's what they chose to do it with those two.
Yeah. And we'll get into the, you know, bylines in a minute to do with, you know, the actual reason why they are there.
Right.
But that reason doesn't even seem to like fit with the episode either, because usually it's like there's something that's going on with them and Clark can relate to it in his own life.
Exactly.
But yeah, their story just doesn't really fit. But yeah, you know, the whole thing goes off. The faulty switches have set the inaugural run of this train just shooting down the line, and it's going to crash. And Superman saves them, of course, and everything's all good. And that's pretty much it. They sort of just like catch the guy.
Yeah, they just knock him down, you know, or whatever. But, and like I was like, all right, well that's good. It's all good. All's well that ends well, I guess. We can assume that Hanson, and we didn't even really mention Hanson, but Hanson is the guy who's trying to run for governor against the incumbent guy. And like, I guess we can assume that he's arrested as well, because he was in on this. He's part of this. He's part of the whole conspiracy to, you know, kill the current governor. So I assume that he got in trouble.
I guess he would have gotten in trouble. I'm not sure like exactly how involved he was though, because there is a scene when he gets in the car with Thorpe, and Thorpe has like killed his henchman guy.
Yes.
Who's sitting there with sunglasses on, so you don't realize he's dead.
Right.
And he kind of gets in and he's talking about like, well, you know, I guess we're not going to win. Everybody likes the current governor and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think he quite knew what was going on until Thorpe showed him that he'd killed his henchman guy and
I suppose
all the stuff that he was going through to make sure that Henson won.
I suppose. But I mean, like after the whole Ferris wheel incident, if I was Hanson, I would have been like, this is getting a little too much for me. Maybe I don't need this, because we could have just killed a whole bunch of people. So yeah, I'm gonna back out. It was he was an undeveloped character. That Hanson. And speaking of the henchmen, I thought this was funny. I didn't pick up on this, but the FOLC fans of Lois and Clark wiki had this in there, that the henchman was using those Chinese balls in his hands. If you remember the one scene, he's like just moving them around in his hands, and they I think they're like bao ding balls or something like that they're called. And he's rolling them, and I guess in the one scene, he drops one, you know, like it falls out of his hand, but instead of picking it up, he just continues to roll just one of them in his hands. It's like they couldn't stop to reset the scene, obviously. So he just kept doing it with just the one. I'm like, that's so strange.
If I don't say anything, maybe nobody will notice.
Exactly. It was just amusing.
All right, well, getting into some bylines. So the parents and Jonathan, he's feeling like real depressed because his best friend has passed away. And after the big fiasco with the train, there's this other dude who passed out. His name is Al, apparently.
Yes. Yeah.
And he and Jonathan kind of hit it off, and he's got a new best friend.
Exactly.
So, yeah, kind of pointless.
Yeah. And like you said, it didn't really fit the main story. There was no relation there to what Clark was going through. It was just a weird, it's just a strange thing, because that's not how it's been in the past. It's always related somehow.
Yeah, and like, how could you have like a best friend for, you know, decades and decades, and
Yes.
you know, be naturally upset when that person dies?
Of course.
And then it's just like all of a sudden, hey, I met this other guy, and he was from Kansas originally, and now we're best friends again, and I'm so happy. He's like, okay, yeah, got over that real quick. Whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Just a bizarre storyline to sort of insert them into the story. Yeah.
And like I said, they could have used other people, you know, into this somehow. But like, we've already got those two characters established, and people like them. Obviously, they go over well with the audience. So why not just bring them in for this episode, rather than trying to create a whole new characters or a whole new situation where, you know, we have to explain how the delivery guy is identified and getting on the train and all this stuff. Just use the guys we already have established.
And I did like the moment after Superman saves the train, and he comes in and he goes, are you okay? And Jonathan goes, we're fine, Clark. I mean, Superman.
Exactly.
A good little touch for that one.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What about Lois and Clark going undercover as copy machine repairman? And then actually having to try and fix a copy machine.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll tell you, I've seen copy repairmen at my school before, and they don't wear suits. But, you know, whatever. It's fine. It was funny. It was a good scene.
Yeah, just kick it.
Like, oh yeah, just kick it. He's a rookie. I'm so sorry.
That's funny. Okay, Clark's overexcitable partner, Diane.
Yeah, she's like a puppy dog, ready to chomping at the bit. It's like, let's go, Clark. Come on.
It was so random. Like,
Yes,
Lois
it
has
was.
been stood down, and Clark just has this new partner, Diane. It
Yeah.
was like, it's as if it's like, she doesn't even acknowledge that Lois is right there. She's
No.
just like, Lois is gone. Time for Diane. Woo! Come on, Clark.
This is the year of Diane.
Everything's coming up, Diane. I loved it. Superman cleans up Lois's place. Did you like this?
Yeah, it was fine. You know, it's like we've seen him do it before. You know, like just use his super speed to clean up the place and everything. So it's whenever they use the superpowers, it's not like, I'm not like, oh, wow, awesome. Oh, it's just, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's fine.
I love the sound effects as he's alphabetizing a Rolodex. It makes that weird, like,
Oh, yeah.
sound effect.
Right.
Very classic speed making sound, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, see, like, again, the whole thing for me is like the whole first season, they would pepper in the superhero powers here and there and everything. But the main point was like the relationships, the stories and all that. And it's just, it's right here. It's like, okay, this is fine. You know, that he wants to help her clean up and everything. I guess that's sort of building their relationship a little bit, but it wasn't something that was like, oh, that's cool. You know, it was just like, all right, well, whatever.
And one last thing, kind of the capper of the episode. Lois gets a phone call that sounds very ominous.
Oh, yeah.
Millions will die? Oh, my God. Oh, relax, Clark. It's just my exterminator.
Exactly. Wah, wah.
Were you chuckling?
Yeah, it was good. It was funny. It was a good capper.
All in all, I thought it was, there was a few give-me's in this episode. A couple of things
Right.
maybe that kind of we nitpicked there. But I think all in all, it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, it's not bad. You know, it was, I didn't hate it. It's not one of my favorites, but it's definitely not bad.
Yeah, I think it's at least a little bit of a step up from last week's, where we were a
Right.
bit like meh on those episodes. So.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, I guess it's quote vote time.
All right.
What's everybody standing around for? This is a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet? Or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette? Am I making myself perfectly clear?
Only a few votes this week, and I kind of had to use my hosting powers to tilt the vote
Okay.
in a certain direction, but we do have a winner, so let's get into it. Cue the music.
Sean Connery and Rembrandt Brown are questioning Kermit the Frog.
Look, I know this guy. Spent a lot of time with him. All he did was talk about you and what he was going to do to you. Now, do you want to know this guy's name or not?
How do you know it?
What? Do you see a sign on my forehead that says stupid?
The phone rings and Kermit answers.
Yeah? You're talking to him. Who's this?
Sean whispers to Remy. Look, I'm sure we can get the information for less. These things are negotiable.
Fine. See if you can talk him down to $20, because that's all I have on me.
Well, money isn't everything. Maybe we can offer him a few nights in a nicer place.
Sure. Maybe we can throw in a harbor cruise while we're at it.
Well, you get serious. We're talking about my life here. Now, let's offer him $100. He'll take it. Just look at him. He's so pathetic. There's a sudden zapping sound, and Kermit falls over. Remy checks his pulse.
He's more than pathetic. He's dead.
And see. I'm actually glad that you picked Remy, because it's gonna have a relation to something coming up in this next episode. Yes.
All right, well, speaking of which, our second episode discussion today is The Prankster, written by Grant Rosenberg and directed by James Heyman, and this originally aired on October 9th of 1994.
Dear Lois, please accept the gift on your desk as an apology for last night. I am itching to be yours, your secret admirer. Well, are you gonna open it?
I don't know.
You want me to open it?
No. No, I'll do it. Oh. It's beautiful. It's a little tight, but...
Which means your secret admirer must work here because nobody else has access to your desk.
Well, that's good deductive reasoning, Jimmy.
Thanks.
But you're wrong. I know what everybody gets paid, and nobody gets paid enough to be able to afford a rock like that, not even me.
It's just the most romantic thing.
Itching to be yours? Give me a break.
Clark, I'm sure it came from his heart.
Amazing. You went from being afraid to open this box to thinking this guy was Longfellow in a matter of 30 seconds.
Oh, Clark, you just don't understand romance.
Lois, are you okay?
I think I'm having an allergic reaction to the gold. It's too tight.
Let me help. Oh! Must have been a cheap setting.
Well, so far, love of boys, batting over 2.
It's discolored. It's been dipped in some kind of chemical. Yeah, real romantic.
Lois has started receiving gifts from a secret admirer, except in this case, the gifts are more along the lines of jokes or pranks. The first gift, a pseudo jack-in-the-box in the shape of famed father of interdimensional traveler, Professor Maximilian Marturo, turns out to emit sound at a deadly decibel level, breaking glass all around them. The second gift, a beautiful ring, turns out to be coated in a special chemical, causing Lois's fingers to begin itching. A third gift disrupts a baseball game, causing Lois great embarrassment, earning her the ire of sports fans everywhere. As the pranks continue, turning out to be distractions for other crimes, a tip comes in which leads them to a man claiming to know who's behind the pranks, but before he can tell them who, he gets a phone call and promptly dies. Nevertheless, the dynamic duo is able to track down who he was and who his prison cellmate was, which leads them to the man behind the pranks, Kyle Griffin, a scientist Lois ended up putting away when she reported on a scandal years ago. Now that he's out, he has come looking for revenge. More investigation leads Lois and Clark to Griffin's father, who is a part of the whole scheme, who plants information with Lois, which causes her to find her way right into a trap set by Griffin. Held captive, she learns that he plans to disintegrate the Daily Planet as a show of force for a group of terrorists he is working with, but luckily Superman thwarts that plan while Lois takes care of Griffin and his lone henchman.
I don't get it. He steals a diamond ring and computer chips. What's the connection?
Lois, Clark, you gotta see this. This just broke into all the news channels.
Good morning, Metropolis. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt your little news bulletin there, but what I've got to say is just more important. Now, the bomb you see on your TV screens is hidden in the basement of one of the city's scientific laboratories, and just so everyone isn't inconvenienced, I'll tell you that that laboratory is located in our city's lovely riverfront industrial area.
All right, somebody get on this right away.
I'll go. Lois, why don't you stay and find out how he cut into the broadcast?
Okay, fine.
As you can see, the bomb on your screens will detonate in exactly 1 minute, 15 seconds. And if you're in that area, 14 seconds, you might want to consider taking an early lunch, 11 seconds. Hey, if you're wondering how come I'm pulling this loony prank, all I can say is I'm an incurable romantic, and I just want to show the world the explosive nature of my love for Lois Lane. Okay, the workers are out. Let's go.
All right, so we have a fair bit in our investigation for this episode.
We do. And then let me just say, I know that it's not Professor Maximilian Arturo. That was supposed to be Pavarotti, but
a great callback.
I had to throw that in there. And it even directly references a Sliders episode. So, yeah. All right. So we have an extra scene with Pete, the sports writer, and he goes up to Lois and he's like, I'm glad I'm not single anymore. I can't deal with that type of stuff. This whole thing reminds me of this ball player I knew. He met a girl on the road. She went nuts for him. When he didn't return her calls, she slipped a scorpion into his catcher's mitt and never caught another game again. I was like, okay. It's like, thanks for that information, Pete.
TMI, Pete. See you later.
Exactly. I mean, he seemed like a fun character, but he just sort of appears out of nowhere, like we've never seen him before, and I don't think we ever see him again. But it would have been nice if they had focused more, like, they got rid of Kat, of course. It would have been nice to have another character in the Daily Planet to play around with. Perry suggests that Lois also kick in for the museum damages. It was a weird line. He's like, well, I told the museum that Daily Planet will take care of the damages, but maybe you should kick in some as well. It was like, why? That's strange.
It's just an employee. Like, what's he gonna do? I got $20 on me, Perry. Here you go.
Exactly. Now, this is weird. In the script, all right, when Clark x-rays the ring box, the script says specifically, like, it actually says in there, in parentheses, no, we don't see what's inside. I'm like, why not? Why would we always see when Clark's using his x-ray vision what he's looking at? Why wouldn't we see this time? For some reason, they did not want to show that. I don't know if they were thinking budget or what, but it said specifically, no, you're not going to see what's inside that box, damn it. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so if you don't see what's inside, then what would be the point of having Clark look at it?
Exactly. I don't know what they're thinking. Anyway, now Perry gives kudos to Jimmy at one point for his deductive reasoning. Before, he says, well, I know what people make, and, the people who make this, who work here, they couldn't afford this ring. But before that, he gives him like kudos, saying, good deductive reasoning, Jimmy, which is going to come into play in the discussion later on about Jimmy. I'll just say that. Lois comments on Loomis's wife's hair when they go to the wrong person. And she says, oh, those nails were fake or whatever. But in the script, she's supposed to comment on the hair and say, oh, she dyes her roots. You can tell, that type of thing. Victor was fun. Victor attempts to tell Griffin in this one scene, how he got their boots to not slip on the road after they made everything slippery, and Griffin basically is like, Victor, shut up. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. It was a funny little scene. We got a lot of that in the episode. While they were stealing stuff from Whitmore Labs, that were distracting by having the bomb in the other lab, Victor goes over to the wall and he takes down a poster it's one of those posters that says, all I need to know I learned in kindergarten, and has like a whole list. He's taken the poster off the wall, and Griffin is like, what are you doing, Victor? He's like, I always wanted one of these things. So I figure since we're here, Griffin's like, we're looking for titanium. Get that alone. It's very good. It made me chuckle. I was like, no, I wanted to see that, Lois's phone call was not from Perry in the script. It was from her mom. Her mom's like, Lois, people are talking about you. They're not saying very nice things. Then she gets cut off, and that's when Griffin, cuts in. When Lois goes to Clark's apartment, he was actually just watching baseball. He wasn't doing the whole basketball, trying to get it into the wastebasket the game. And she brings Woody Allen movies rather than Mel Gibson Lethal Weapon movies. When they go to the toy shop, the father is supposed to show off some type of like weird. It was described as a lucite spiral. And basically, it's supposed to be some telescope thing that you look through. And he says, look, you can see the outline of the cityscape of Metropolis through this. And Lois is like, I can't see anything. He goes, well, you have to use your imagination. That's part of the fun. And she's like, really? She's like,
so you make toys that don't work.
Exactly. And she's like, this is $800. Do you sell much of these? And he's like, well, I don't sell so much, but, I'm trying to find a better location. Being between a beauty parlor and a funeral home doesn't really work for me.
Okay.
And like, I was like, that's just weird, because this is one of the things I went back to look at. When they go to see him, that is not really a toy shop. It looks like a warehouse that they're in or something. Like it's not really a toy store. Like they described it in the script as being a mix between Sharper Image and Imaginarium, which I've never been to Imaginarium, but that's not what it looked like. It looked like it was a big warehouse where he just sort of did work and made toys, not sold them. But it was supposed to be like a selling place, I guess.
Yeah.
There was a scene with Perry asking Clark, do you have anything for the afternoon edition about this prankster guy? And and Clark's like, no, I don't got nothing right now. And, where's Lois? And like, I don't know. She was with you last I heard. And like, I don't know. And then Jimmy comes up and says, I heard on the police scanner, there's a gas attack over at the da-da-da-da. And Clark goes, all right, wait, I'll go. It was just like an extra scene, like definitely just padding in there. There was no reason for that scene. Like, just extra stuff. Clark tells Jimmy, just an extra line, get as many pics of this as you can when they find the red clay. He's like, just, take a bunch of pictures, and then he runs off. I don't know if they had the thing in there about the plutonium on the shoes or whatnot, but it was just that extra line about the, get as many pics as you can of the red clay for some reason, which I don't know why they would need extra pics of the red clay. So, whatever. So Griffin was on the phone with the terrorists at the end when he has Lois captive, and basically was saying, all right, well, the price is set at, $25 million if you think the test goes well, then let's meet here and here. If you want to see the test, park just west of the Daily Planet and bring popcorn. And then finally, we got Superman at the end. He goes and stops the beam and everything. But in the original script, he was going to actually find the hideout first. And Lois was going to say, they're going to destroy the planet with that machine. And then he was going to take off and then stop the beam, basically leaving Lois there, not really saving her, but just like, okay, I'll go take care of this, and leaving Lois just hanging out with the bad guys. The good thing about that scene was, though, at the end, Victor had a funny line because he looks at the door because Superman rips it off, of course, when he comes in. He's like, I'm not putting that back up, Of course, So it was a good ending to the scene, a funny ending. But yeah, it's like if Superman showed up, I think he'd save Lois and then go.
Lois, it's after 11.
I know it's late. I'm sorry, but I have this sudden urge for pizza and a Mel Gibson movie. I know how much you like pizza and Lethal Weapon, so here I am.
Great. Come in.
So what should we start with? Lethal Weapon 1 or Lethal Weapon 2? Or there's 3. It's sort of stupid at the beginning, but it gets better.
Lois, is something wrong?
Does something have to be wrong for me to want to spend some time with a friend?
No. No. Sorry. 1 would be great.
This is really great. We should do this more often. What are you doing tomorrow night?
Lois.
Clark, don't!
Hello? Hello? There's nobody there. Just a wrong number.
The wrong number. No problem. That happens all the time in the big city, right?
Lois, you want to tell me what happened?
Nothing happened. Nothing important. Griffin called me.
What? What did he say?
Oh, the usual. Said Lois, hi, how are you? Long time no see. I'm gonna kill you.
Kill you? What, did you call the police?
Clark, I am a professional reporter. This is not the first threat that I have ever received. These things, they never pan out.
Well, maybe not, but I'd feel a lot better if you stayed here tonight.
Well, if it would make you feel better, then I guess that...
Don't let me twist your arm or anything.
Clark, I don't want to die.
Lois, I would not let that happen.
All right, so getting into the main story, and the main story is pretty much the prankster.
The prankster.
It starts off by committing a robbery, a giant diamond, using this opera Jack-in-the-Box.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting ploy. At least this is the kind of character that they've set up to be a bit goofy, like a Riddler-esque.
Exactly.
Kind of character, so the fact that his plan is a bit goofy works. This time around, I think, like a lot more than, say, like the last episode, where you're just like, why is he making this nonsensical plan?
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with the prankster at all. Like, I knew he was an actual comic book character, but I don't remember really any stories that I've read with him at all. I remember the Trickster. I remember, of course, the Joker. I remember the Toy Man, but the prankster I'd heard of, but just I wasn't very familiar with him. And I'm not even sure how accurate this prankster is to the actual comics.
Yeah, so what do you think of Carl Griffin, the prankster, as played by Bronson Pinchot?
I think it was good. I think it was a lot of fun. Like you said, he plays him a little goofy, but there's also like, he's unbalanced, like he is goofy, but he's very dangerous as well. He's got like a very dark side to him. So I thought it was good. It was a good balance.
Yeah, I like Bronson Pinchot. I think he's a funny guy. I know him best, I guess, from the Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Oh, really? Okay.
He'd always come in and be like, Aquel Foley? Oh, my God.
I know him because, again, see, I guess I'm just a sitcom guy. I remember him from Perfect Strangers.
I never saw that one either.
Oh, my gosh, no? See, that's the one, like, I know, 48 Hours, that whole run of movies. But the TV show, I think, is where he really got his big break, because that was on for a couple of years, I think. Basically, he played a foreigner from, I can't remember the name of the place. I think it might have been made up, but his name was Balky. And he comes to, I think it was New York, and he has a cousin there named Larry, and he has no place to go, so Larry reluctantly takes him in, and it's basically an Odd Couple type thing, because Balky is very simple. He's not used to the city life. He comes from a place where, you know, they have like goats in their house and, you know, chickens in their bathroom, that type of thing. It's like a very, you know, very small town, you know, not exactly third world, but, you know, that type of thing, like not even close to city life at all. So he's always confused by these things that happen in the city. And there's a lot of hilarity that ensues with him trying to understand what goes on and how to live in the city. It was okay. But, his character, to me, I was like, I watched it. It was okay, but his character got a little annoying as the show went on. So that's where I know him from.
Yeah, but he plays a couple of the pranks, you know, starting with the Jack in the Box, and he sends Lois a ring with a piece of that diamond put into it. It makes her all itchy. And it does have a funny little side bit where Lois thinks it's this old college admirer called Randall Loomis.
Now, see, that's a tie to the comic book right there, because in the comics, I think it was Oswald Loomis or something like that. It was another Loomis that was the actual prankster in the comics. And I was trying to think, is there a way that they could bring this guy back as the real prankster later? But I don't think they do. I was just like, because that's his name. That's the actual prankster's name, the Loomis.
No, I thought it was funny though. You know, she goes track this guy down, thinking, after all these years, he's back.
Exactly.
But he's like some tech billionaire now.
Yes.
Getting ready to move to Paris with his beautiful wife and stuff.
Yep.
It's a good little moment.
Oh yeah.
But you know, it pretty much just has this like slow burn to unveiling his plan, and all this stuff with like playing pranks on Lois is kind of like his cover for what his real plan is. He's stealing things in order to make this weapon that can like disintegrate anything,
like
right?
A phaser, like a major phaser. You know, like a Star Trek phaser. Just, yeah.
Because he goes through like all this other stuff where he makes a road slick, and that's kind of just to distract everybody so he can break into this van and get a microchip.
Mm-hmm.
They steal a bunch of titanium by threatening to blow up a lab, which was another good bit. You know, he goes live on the TV and everything and says, I'm going to blow up this lab, and it's all a declaration of my love for Lois Lane.
Exactly.
Pranking Superman, who busts in just in time to see a little flag pop up. That goes boom. So, I don't know. I kind of liked as the whole plan came together. What do you reckon?
I liked him and the back and forth between him and his henchman, Victor. I thought that was great. It was there was a lot of like moments where I was like, this is kind of like the Three Stooges, the two of them together. You know, like he's like hitting them, or he's going to take the goggles and smack them with them. I was like, this is fun stuff.
Yeah, it was an interesting like character trait for Victor, that he is like a very smart guy, yes. And that's why Kyle is working with him. But he's like an idiot savant in a way. He has trouble with the little things. Later when he's coming on to Lois and stuff, and he's like, I did hear that smart men are always leg men, and you have great legs.
Most boobs are just interested in, well, you know. I was like, he's so awkward. I love that character. He was fun.
Yeah, when he's got the chip and he drops it.
Yeah.
And Kyle's like standing very still. He's like, well, do you see it? You do realize that microchip's worth $100,000.
Yeah, he's like, I think like it would be neat because he would be very easy, I think, to turn to the side of good. You know, being so smart, it'd be good to have him on the good side. I don't think he's necessarily evil. You know, I don't think he's necessarily a bad guy at heart. He just sort of somehow fell in with Griffin there, Kyle Griffin, and just he's going along with it. I think he could be turned to the good side.
Yeah, I reckon. They get like a hot lead on who Kyle Griffin is from this guy who like calls him up and he wants like $10,000. And they're like, we can't give you that. Seriously? And before they can get too much information from him, he is electrocuted via telephone.
Yes.
Again, I thought this fit for the Kyle Griffin character. I mean, It's just so weird to think that, you know, is there some way you could rig a telephone to electrocute someone?
Right.
You know, it makes you think, like, how would you pull this off? Like, we're not going to tell you, but it's just like this thing I can do where I can make a phone electrocute you to death. I thought it was just an interesting side part.
He's making a nuclear weapon or whatever out of bits and pieces that he steals here and there. So I guess it's possible. I guess he's smart enough to do it.
And, they do get just enough to sort of piece it together, and they lead it back to Kyle. And he was originally a weapons designer. Like, his company was involved in, like, illegal weapons or something like that, or, like, selling weapons to the other side or something like that. Like,
something like
terrorists. Yeah, and he was kind of implicated in that whole thing. It was Lois's first big story that she broke, and Kyle ended up in prison for, like, 10 years or something like that?
Right.
So he's just trying to get revenge on her. He threatens to kill Lois, right?
Oh, yeah.
And she has to go and stay with Clark. She doesn't overtly come out and say, I want to come and stay with you, Clark.
Exactly.
I'm, like, so freaked out.
Yeah,
if it makes you feel better, Clark, then yeah, okay, I'll stay here.
Exactly.
I thought that was good.
It's fitting for her character.
Yeah. And they track down Kyle's retired father. And I don't know, like, this whole thing with the father. I think this is the one part that kind of just fell down a bit for me. I said, they show up there and he's, like, showing them all this toys, and then he's made this, like, mini tennis court, and he just happens to mention the clay that he uses.
Right.
And then that clay can only be found by where Kyle's hideout is. And you're like,
exactly.
It was just, it was a little bit weird and convoluted, this part.
Well, yeah, I was not sure because, yeah, that's where the hideout is. But then they go, like, to the science place where whatever the place was that the gas attack was happening. Like, they go there. That's not the hideout, though. So, like, he was trying to lead them to the hideout, but instead they went to a different place altogether. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So it's like, it didn't quite work what he was trying to do there. Like, I understand where he was going with that, trying to, lay a clue for them that, that they would pick up. Oh, well, then that's where we got to go.
Well, and conveniently, Lois is the only one who goes there. Because
Right.
if Clark went, then he wouldn't have any effect from the gas. So it is convenient that only Lois was the one that was there as she gets captured.
Yeah. Oh, but let's see. Maybe that is why. Maybe that's how Superman is able to find the hideout later. Maybe that's why it was important to hear that bit. Yeah, maybe that's why.
But he, of course, like, unveils his big laser disintegration ray thing. And using a billboard and a mirror to bounce off for some reason, he shoots it at the Daily Planet, and of course Superman comes in and just stops it.
Because it's supposed to disintegrate anything it comes in contact with. So wouldn't the billboard and the mirror be like disintegrated first? But okay.
Yeah, that's true. This whole thing about mirrors that just like reflect things, and you're just like,
Yes.
okay, seriously, like, wait, yeah, whatever. But Superman saves the day, and that's the point. And the prankster is thrown back in prison, I guess.
Yes. And Lois uses her great legs to take him down.
Yeah, does some karate motion, which is good, It's like we're saying in the investigation, like, I guess Superman was supposed to come and save her and then save the planet, but it was good to sort of let Lois be like, I'm free, now I'm going to kick your ass. Boom, boom, boom,
exactly.
boom. I didn't mind that. It was pretty good. All right, so some bylines. At the beginning, when they're in the art gallery and nobody understands art except Lois.
Yes, except Lois.
And Perry sees the face of Elvis from a certain angle.
Yeah, it's good. It was good. It just makes me want more with Perry.
Yeah, more Elvis stories. Come on.
Like, are you noticing it? Like, now we're 4 episodes in now to the second season, and there's a big, like, it's less focused on the side characters now.
Yeah, for sure.
They're just there every once in a while. In fact, there is a line that comes up in an episode later that is perfect. And I forget what season it is, but it's always stuck with me, where Perry says to Jimmy, he says, you ever feel like we're just like the supporting characters on a TV show? And Jimmy's like, yeah, like we're just here to advance the plot or something. And
we're just supporting characters in the Lois and Clark show.
Exactly. And that's, yeah. And I'm like, that's kind of what has happened here. And I never really thought about it much before until we started taking an analytical look, at the show. And like they have toned down the side characters in this second season so far in just 4 episodes. The main focus is really Lois and Clark, and then whoever the villain is of the week.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's like, it's sad.
What about Clark stopping the out-of-control car with his foot.
It was good. It was
and
funny.
then Lois making a Flintstones gag.
It's like all these things, you know, him staring at the wall in the last episode, this time with the foot out the door. It's like she's getting close. She's got, you know, like she's got to be wondering, what the hell, man?
I thought it was good that Clark had to like run away immediately because she questions like, why'd you open the door? And I guess he's kind of like, I guess in case I have to like tuck and roll out or something like that. But if he'd stuck around, she would have noticed that like his shoe must have just like shredded.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. We kind of briefly talked about Pete the sports reporter already.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Pete just dropped in once in a while and gave us his 2 cents.
Exactly. I don't remember
had to go
him.
with Lois for some reason. Okay, so Lois fumbling around her apartment, all freaked out.
Yeah, that was funny. It was a good scene.
Good
Not
bit of
sure
slapstick.
something's been rigged, you know, opening the refrigerator up. She's like scared.
Then when the phone rings and she puts on the oven mitts and then gets out a wooden spoon to like, or a pair of tongs or something. Yeah, it was pretty funny. Clark wishes he was more like Mel Gibson.
I bet he wouldn't say that today.
I also noted that she only got 3 Lethal Weapon movies.
Right. Well,
I guess the 4th one hasn't come out yet.
Yes.
Diane is randomly back right at the end,
Yep.
passing on Lois's delivery of yellow roses. She also gives us an insight to her love life.
Oh, yes, she does.
I thought that was funny.
Oh my.
Again, just another random thing, you know, like Pete, the sports reporter.
Right.
Just have Diane drop in randomly and say some snarky remark and then leave. That'd be hilarious.
So now, I never noticed this, you know, until now. Like I said, when we go back and we watch these shows, if you've seen it before, you have it in your head about what you remember and your opinion of the show and everything. Just like when we did Sliders and I was like, oh man, season 5 is gonna suck. And there was some bad points, definitely. But there were some good episodes in there. I don't remember in Lois and Clark here being disappointed when they switched Jimmy's out. I don't remember being disappointed by that because I was just like, oh, it's okay. This is our new Jimmy, no big deal. But like looking at it now in this way, I'm like, man, Jimmy has become much slower. He's kind of dumb. He has no nose for news anymore. In the first season, he was always saying, well, what if it was this? Or what if it was this? How about we check into this? What if we look into that? You know, but now in this one, he's like, I don't get it. Why would that be? Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I understand.
I am so not a reporter.
I know.
Explain it to me, please.
Yeah, I'm just like, it's weird. It's like, I remember in the first episode, iReaction sent us some notes and they said, you know, the character of Jimmy is still written the same. You know, they didn't change anything for the new actor, and they didn't. But now that we're getting into, you know, the next couple episodes, he's a different Jimmy now. He is not as quick. You know, he's not as quick on the uptake as he was in the first season. It's a different character now. He's just slower. He's not as smart.
I think it comes with that. Like we said, like the character seems younger. When they swapped out the actor, the character just plays as intentionally younger, almost teenaged in a way.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it does seem that they've just dumbed him down a little bit. And, you know, as if he's still, like, grasping to get the concept of being a reporter.
In the first season, like, you could totally see, like, Jimmy would be right there with Clark and Lois, like, given, you know, theories and ideas and whatnot. So it was just odd when I noticed it in this episode specifically. I'm like, what the hell, man? I mean, you know, and maybe it's because Perry's like congratulating him, like, yeah, at the end when he says, oh, well, it seems like, you know, Griffin's father was in on the whole thing too, right? You know, like he's looking for approval. Yeah. And it's like, well, of course he was, you idiot. You know, like you should know this. What's wrong with you, Jimmy?
I think besides just a couple of nitpicks here in this episode, I thought this was pretty decent.
Yeah, no, I like this episode.
Yeah, good fun villain as well, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good reinterpretation of the villain because there's going to be some other, at least one other that I know of, another reinterpretation of the villain from the comics in an upcoming episode. I forget if it's this season or the next or whatever, but it's not a good reinvention of the character from the comics at all.
Look forward to that then.
Yeah.
Lois, these just came for you.
Oh, Diane, what do yellow roses mean?
I don't know. The only thing men ever give me are directions to their house.
Yellow is for friendship.
From a special friend. A final sick joke from Kyle Griffin.
You know what? Lois, wait. No! Those roses cost me $50.
Oh! I'm sorry.
All right, so let's get into some back issues.
All right. Well, we fall prey to the bad title effect. We have the title, The Source. And when you're going to look through these old forums from 1994 with The Source as your title, along with Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, you're not going to find what you're looking for. Because The Source they could be referring to an actual episode of like Lois's source in the last episode. It could have been any of their issue or any other episodes because they've had sources before they've spoken to. And then like it could be just people commenting on their source in real life about, I heard this about this show because the source said da da da. So it was very difficult to find anything about that particular episode at all. It was mentioned in one post because they were talking about whether Superman needs sleep or not. And I guess the source was one episode of many where Clark actually does sleep or he gets tired. So
that's right. Yeah, he gets woken up at one point.
Yeah, so they listed that in there. It was funny. That post also contained a discussion about Dean Cain possibly being up for the role of Superman in Superman 5, which, of course, didn't really happen until years later with Brandon Routh. But, yeah, and then they were talking about rumors of Christopher Reeve directing and writing, maybe even starring in it. And then someone else said, no, I heard that he said he was too old, so they're going to have someone else who do it. And they talk about John Peters, who's on board, and it's called Superman Reborn. And it just went off from there. I was like, oh, it's interesting to look back what they were thinking. But even the Kryptonian Cybernet has let me down. This is, of course, the fan magazine that was written by Jeffrey Sykes, who was doing, he was doing episode recaps, and he started a little online magazine, a fanzine called the Kryptonian Cybernet. And Zoomway, of course, from the Zoomway forums, she was a part of this magazine. There was a girl named Joanna. There was some other guys who contributed to it as well. And even that, I looked at it. Issue 6 of the Kryptonian Cybernet had reviews of the last 2 episodes that we talked about, Madam X and the Wall of Sound. And then I looked at issue 7. Issue 7 had a review of an upcoming episode, Churches of Metropolis. So the next one. So they didn't cover these 2 episodes that we're talking about today at all. I was like, well, that's weird. Why wouldn't they do that? So I decided to do some Googling, and I was going to try to find out, is this Jeffrey Sykes, is he still around? Because I'm thinking if he's still around, maybe he has copies of the Kryptonian Cybernet still. Maybe I missed, maybe there was like an issue 6.5 or something in between. So I did some Googling, and I found out that on the very page that I look at, SupermanHomepage.com, they have an archive of all the Kryptonian Cybernet issues. There was like 70 issues that they put out between 93 and I think the year 2000 or something like that. And I looked at them, and they're all in there. They're very long fanzines. And they covered not just Lois and Clark, but everything going on in the Superman universe. So they talk about the comics, the movies, anything that's going on with Superman at all, they covered in this Kryptonian Cybernet. So that's why I guess they didn't talk about every single episode of Lois and Clark. It's just whatever was coming on that particular week when they were putting the magazine together. But if you do want to read them, anybody can go over to the SupermanHomepage.com, and in there they have the Kryptonian Cybernet back issues. There's like I said, there's about 70 or so in there. It's pretty cool to find them all. I was like, oh, this is neat. They're all in here. Also, the only thing I found for the prankster was a spoiler, and because there is apparently going to be another episode with the prankster coming back again.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I looked for the prankster, and all I could find were posts about the episode called The Prankster Returns or something like that. So I didn't read about it, but we now know the prankster will be back at some point.
Cool. Look forward to it.
Yep. Oh, and I will say that in the Kryptonian Cybernet, I think I mentioned this before, Jason Alexander was first tapped to be the prankster, but then eventually went to, Bronson Pinchot instead.
All right. So we do have a little bit in our personal ads.
We do. We have, over on sliders.tv, I went over there and, since we were interviewing, since we had iReactions, Abraham Ing, since we had him on the show an episode or two ago to discuss Lois and Clark, I thought, well, I'll post back on sliders.tv and let them know, hey, he appeared on the show if you want to hear his bit. And so I posted it up there, and we got some good comments over there from the sliders.tv guys. And then iReactions came on, and he said, I must confess that I am deeply displeased with how my appearance on Lois and Clark podcast turned out. Discussions of great import were cut from the final product. Discussions that were edited out. As a responsible message board poster, I feel I must share these passages that were hidden from you for reasons too insidious to contemplate. And so he has listed, iReactions went ahead, and he transcribed the missing, quote unquote, missing sections of the interview. So, if you liked hearing from iReactions on the show, and you wanna hear about the quote unquote missing sections from the interview, go over to sliders.tv and look at the thread there for Lois and Clark, and they're quite amusing. It's very funny.
Yeah, he is making a bit of a joke out of it, but yeah. I did have to edit down a lot of our discussion just because it was too long. It was just way long, and the episode would have ended up being over 2 hours. So
yeah,
I was like, no, I got to cut it down to about 20 minutes. So we talked about a lot, but a lot of it ended up on the cutting room floor. But the good stuff is still in there.
The good stuff is in there, and the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor is definitely not what's been transcribed here.
No, definitely not.
you got to check this out because it's so funny. Because as I said in the introduction to his appearance, he is the keeper of the Sliders flame. He is a huge Sliders fan. So the excerpts that we have here are very Sliders-esque, I guess is what to say. So check them out and enjoy a good chuckle on these quote-unquote deleted scenes from our interview.
Okay, so our next issue we'll be talking about Church of Metropolis and Operation Blackout. So what do you reckon?
All right, Church of Metropolis. I remember at some point, and I didn't think it was this soon, but I guess it could be, that there was a family in Metropolis called the Churches, and they become like the new leading crime people, the head of a group called Intergang, if I remember correctly. And I think it was called Bill and Mindy Church, and Bill Church was played by Raymond Romano's father from the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond.
Right.
The father plays Bill Church, and his wife Mindy is a much younger blonde bombshell or something like that. That's what I remember, and I didn't think it was this early in the show, but maybe it is. Maybe this is where it all starts.
Doesn't sound familiar at all.
I remember because I was like, "What is this?" But anyway, it goes on for quite a while, I think. So I guess it starts here. Operation Blackout, I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe something to do with Superman working with the military again, possibly?
Could be, yeah. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't remember anything about that title at all. We will find out next week because that's it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch. Don't forget, you can also follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod or visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has some of our favorite links there, such as zoomway.net, folc.wiki.com, supermanhomepage.com, and, of course, links to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And as always, you can write us an email or record a voice message and send it to therewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. 5 stars would be very much appreciated. You can also help support the Rewatch Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast and make a monthly contribution as little as $1. We're also on YouTube, so search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. All right, well, thank you for joining me for these 2 episodes of Lois and Clark, Tom.
Yep.
And I will just say until next time. I know how much you like pizza and Lethal Weapon, so here I am.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2016, the Rewatch Podcast.
Wear your beepers. We'll be in touch.
Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Cory.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Cory. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone.